The city of Allentown, Pennsylvania was still reeling from hearing of the triple homicide committed by the Freeman brothers. But the tragedy was just beginning, and that brings us to our next story, a tale of another horrific tragedy committed by a young man.
Days after the shocking murders of the Freeman family, another tragedy struck the town, this time involving a seemingly ordinary teenage boy. But what led this boy to commit such a heinous act? The answer lies in a deeply troubled mind, influenced by a story that had captivated the nation. To those who knew him, Jeffrey Howorth was the last person anyone would expect to commit a violent crime. Born and raised in Allentown, Jeffrey was a bright, quiet teenager who excelled in school and on the swim team. His parents, George and Susan Howorth, were well respected in the community. George was a successful engineer, and Susan was a beloved elementary school teacher. But despite his achievements, Jeffrey was a deeply troubled young man. He was introverted, often keeping to himself and struggling to connect with his peers. Those who knew him described him as a loner, someone who kept his emotions bottled up and rarely expressed his true feelings. Underneath the surface, Jeffrey was grappling with a growing sense of anger and resentment, emotions that he didn't know how to process or control. In February 1995, as Jeffrey's internal struggles reached a boiling point, the shocking murders of the Freeman family dominated the news. The community was gripped by fear and disbelief, unable to comprehend how two boys could commit such a heinous act. But while most of Allentown watched the unfolding tragedy with horror, Jeffrey saw something else. An opportunity. The media coverage of the Freeman murders fascinated him, and in that twisted fascination, he found a dark sense of validation for the thoughts that had been brewing in his mind. The idea of murdering his own parents had been festering for some time, but the Freeman story gave him the final push he needed to carry out his deadly plan. On March 2nd, 1995, less than a week after the Freeman murders, Jeffrey stayed home from school, claiming to be sick. But instead of resting, he spent the day preparing for what he was about to do. His father, George, returned home first. As he walked through the door, Jeffrey calmly retrieved a .22 caliber rifle that he had taken from his father's gun cabinet. Without a word, Jeffrey raised the rifle and fired multiple shots into his father, killing him instantly. There was no struggle, no hesitation, just cold, calculated violence. Moments later, his mother, Susan, arrived home. She barely had time to register what was happening before Jeffrey turned the rifle on her, firing shot after shot until she, too, lay dead on the floor. After the murders, Jeffrey showed no signs of panic or remorse. He calmly packed a bag, loaded his rifle and ammunition into the family car, and set off on the road, leaving the grisly scene behind. When Jeffrey's brother Steve arrived home, he contacted police when he could not get into the home and could see a trail of blood when peering inside. The police gained entrance to the home and made the discovery of the two bodies of Jeffrey's parents, along with rambling notes that pointed to his guilty, with one line reading, "I told you I would do it, Steve," referring to his brother, who denied knowing anything about his brother's plans to murder their parents. It was also noted that a .22 caliber rifle, believed to be the murder weapon, was missing from the residence. The hunt for Jeffrey began immediately, with authorities issuing a nationwide alert. But the teenager showed no signs of distress as he drove through state after state, seemingly unaware of the chaos he had left behind. Jeffrey's flight came to an end on March 4th, 1995, when he was spotted by a police officer in Bowling Green, Kentucky. He was sitting in his car, parked outside a shopping center, seemingly without a care in the world. When the officer approached, Jeffrey made no attempt to flee or resist. He was arrested on the spot and extradited back to Pennsylvania to face charges for the murders of his parents. But the case was far from straightforward. During interrogations, Jeffrey displayed an eerie calmness, showing little emotion or remorse for what he had done. His behavior led investigators to question whether something much deeper, something much darker, was at play. Psychologists who evaluated Jeffrey suggested that he suffered from severe mental illness, including deep-seated depression and possible psychosis. They argued that he was not in his right mind when he committed the murders, that he was driven by delusions and a profound detachment from reality. Jeffrey himself admitted that he had been planning the murders for months, but he couldn't fully explain why. His mind was a maze of confusion and darkness, with no clear exit. In court, Jeffrey's defense team argued that he was not guilty by reason of insanity. They presented evidence of his deteriorating mental state, pointing to his obsession with the Freeman murders as a trigger for his own violent actions. The prosecution, on the other hand, argued that Jeffrey knew exactly what he was doing, that his actions were premeditated and deliberate. But in the end, the jury was swayed by the defense's arguments. In 1996, Jeffrey Howorth was found not guilty by reason of insanity. He was committed to a state mental hospital, where he would remain for treatment instead of serving time in prison. The case of Jeffrey Howorth left the Allentown community reeling once again, forcing everyone to confront the uncomfortable truth that mental illness, if left untreated, can lead to unimaginable horrors. While the Freeman brothers were motivated by hatred and rebellion, Jeffrey's actions were the result of a mind unraveling, a mind that had lost its grip on reality. Today, Jeffrey remains in a mental health facility, receiving the care and treatment he so desperately needed before it was too late. His story is a tragic reminder of the importance of recognizing the signs of mental illness and the devastating consequences that can follow when those signs are ignored. It seems that sometimes the most dangerous battles are the ones fought within our own minds, and that without help, those battles can lead to devastating outcomes. If you found these stories compelling, please like this video and leave me a comment. Follow me for more mysterious stories of true crime like these, and much more. Thank you for watching. Stay curious.